Well, good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. Thank you for attending our first local government small business assistance advisory group meeting for our Q1. And we'll go ahead and I think we started our housekeeping. We can proceed with those.
Thank you for participating in today's meeting. If attending in person, please do not connect to Zoom or teleconference while in the room, and please silence all devices. If translation is provided, click on the globe at the bottom of your screen to select either English or Spanish. Public comment will be taken after each item. If you're in the auditorium and wish to comment, please use the iPads located in the lobby or complete a blue speaker card as available. If you need assistance, please find a South Coast AQMD employee. Speakers may be limited to a total of 3 minutes or less for all agenda items. Times may be shortened to ensure all speakers can be heard. A countdown timer will be displayed on the screen for each public comment. More time will be allotted for Spanish translation that is not simultaneous. For questions or issues on making a public comment, please call the public advisor at 909-396-2432. That's 909-396-2432. Please adhere to the speaker time limit and treat others with courtesy, civility, and respect. Failure to do so can result in your mic being muted or you being removed from the meeting. Be aware that this meeting is being recorded. By participating, you authorize recording of audio and visual content presented during the live event and consent to subsequent use of the recording in the public domain by South Coast AQMD.
Okay, well, thank you. And we'll go ahead and call our meeting to order and start with roll call, please.
Felipe Aguirre. Absent. Rochelle Azramendi. Absent. Paul Avila.
Present.
Jeffrey Blake.
Present.
Todd Campbell. Absent. Levon Daniel. John DeWitt.
Here.
Bill Lamar.
Lamar here.
Rita Luth. Present. Eddie Marquez.
Present.
David Rothbart.
Here.
Mayor Blair Stewart.
Here.
Mayor Ted Buie.
Here.
Councilmember James Bretling.
Present.
Mayor Patricia Locke Dawson, absent. And Chair Carlos Rodriguez.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Well, thank you. And I just want to take a moment, and I know we've all continue to have our thoughts and prayers by all affected by the tragic wildfires, and want to take a moment to thank Mayor Blair Stewart for your service on the fires. Clearly you're in action, you dressed appropriately there. Thank you for, in the midst of all that, being here today, and for what you and all of the other first responders continue to do. So just want to say we appreciate you. So let's move into our action item, starting with our minutes. And I'll say before we take a motion on the minutes, how I want to thank you all in advance for your continued service on the advisory group. Each and every one of you bring a unique perspective. And again, we're grateful for your time and input as we do the best we can to support the mission of South Coast Air Quality Management District. So with that, I'll go ahead and see if we have a a motion regarding the minutes from our last meeting on November 8th.
Move approval.
Okay. Thank
Second.
you. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. We'll go to. Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and take a roll call then.
Felipe Aguirre, absent. Rochelle Arizmendi, absent. Paul Avila,
Present.
oh, yay or nay?
Paul, I'm not here. Approve.
Thank you. Jeffrey Blake,
Yes, approval.
Todd Campbell, absent. Levon Daniel,
Aye.
John DeWitt, Bill Lamar,
Lamar, aye.
Rita Luke, aye. Eddie Marquez,
Aye.
David Rothbart,
Yes.
Mayor Blair Stewart. Thank you. Mayor Ted Bowie.
Aye.
Councilmember James Bretling,
Move to approve.
Mayor Patricia Locke Dawson, absent, and Chair Carlos Rodriguez.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. So we'll move into our discussion items, starting with discussion item number 3, review of follow-up and action items. And I'll turn it over to Lisa Tanaka for that. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Apologies. There is an action item with Mr. Lamar, and I believe he communicated with Daphne Sue, our staff attorney, and she provided information back. So that item is completed. That's it.
Okay.
Can we give more details, Mr. Chair, as far as to the topic of that item?
Hi, Mr. Lamar had provided some information regarding the Blue Ribbon Committee, and I provided him the most recent charter for this committee.
Thank you.
And Chair, I just wanted to acknowledge there is a hand raised, but I don't know for what item.
Okay, if I'm having a hard time tracking that, so I appreciate the help. Do we have a comment? Who do we have online? Was there a hand raised or no?
We have one member of the public, Harvey Eder, for public comment.
Okay, let's go ahead and take that public comment.
Hello, am I being heard?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, my name's Harvey Eder. I'm speaking for myself and for PSPC, etc. In reference to accepting your minutes, we could not see the agenda. We can, yesterday and before, and this has been a problem for several meetings and other meetings. We press download and nothing happens, or we press download and it says it cannot be released securely, which means that we're opening up all our information to the black web, everything. That they don't have it already, but it's pretty outrageous that we've got to expose ourselves like this to participate in the public process, and I'm sure it's illegal as hell. So this has to be remedied, and it's a process question. So you can't accept minutes if we don't know what happened at the meetings, and it did have this drop down say with attachments. But anyway, it's a generic problem and needs to be addressed. And relevant to public participation, violation of CEQA, NEPA, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so Understand the questions?
This is public comment, so if you want to complete your public comment, we'll
Well,
Another
my
minute.
understanding, public comment comes at the end of the meeting. I'm commenting on before you should have voted on accepting the minutes.
Mr. Edwards,
We
it's not a dialogue.
signed into that and
It's
we're
not a
making
dialogue,
comments
so-
on that.
please go ahead.
Okay, what I just heard, this little exchange and being purged again is uncool, having to make little elevator talks on public policy. Look, I thought we were just threatened the reverse approval here or something, which sends arse backwards. Look, you're going to take away our public comment time when we're commenting on you accepting the minutes. That's outrageous. We have to reserve time so we can. That's really effed up later.
Chair, I think I see another hand raised.
Okay, go ahead.
Morning, everyone. This is Maria Isabel Arias from the U2 movement, local group that advocates for special needs families and children. My public comment is that please consider our low income, our needy community members that will be impacted if you pass the regulation, the single family units or structures will not use gas.
Hi,
gas
ma'am.
equipment.
That's item number 6, and we haven't reached there yet, so we'll call on you if you raise your hand again once we reach item number 6.
Then I would like an opportunity to say that I can provide my comment now because I may not be available then. And I just wish to put my public comment in general. So once you get there, please consider my comment. And is that you must consider the low income and the families, the thousands of families that you will impact, especially when it's going to be a cost to those families to change their gas equipment to an electrical equipment. Please consider the families and the needy because you're not considering that. Most likely this will not be covered by insurance as it will be mandated to be done. So that is very alarming to me as I advocate for the special needs community and the low income Hispanic Black families. Please consider my comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your comment. And we're continuing our comment related to item 3. Are we not?
Mr. Chair, I had a comment.
Go ahead, Bill.
With respect to the Daphne's comments on that, as I looked, I think the item, the change came before the board in 2023, and that was only to change the number of members on local government small business. And that was really a minor change, and I didn't see much difficulty in that. But as an original member of the Blue Ribbon Committee some 20-some years ago, it bothers me that the district, whether it's the executive officer or the staff, can arbitrarily make changes to our advisory group's mission and charter, and without any knowledge of the members, including the chair. I'm not sure if you were aware of the 2023 amendment, but I certainly wasn't when it came before the board. That certainly wasn't the intent of the Blue Ribbon Committee at that time. Any proposed changes to our mission and charter or on any of the advisory groups should be brought to the membership and make them aware of what the proposal is, and then have it voted on.
Does that complete your comment, Bill? Okay, thank you. So I think just generally speaking, if there were in the future, a proposed change to the charter, scope, mission, et cetera, Daphne, would that be something that would be handled at admin, or just from a procedural standpoint, you need to briefly clarify that process so that we're understanding that?
Let me look into that to make sure that I understand which committees it goes before. I do know, had thought that this group did see the charter, but let me double check to make sure that I understand the process.
Okay, so just when we come back at our next meeting, as an action item, if we could just get clarity on the process, and that way we'll have a clear path forward that everyone understands. So Bill, thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move forward to adjust our agenda a little bit and move item 6 up next, and have an update on outreach for proposed amended rules 1111 and 1121.
Great. Thank you, members, chair and members of the advisory group. Today I'm going to be presenting on the outreach for proposed amended rules 1111 and 1121 and the Go Zero incentive program. These rules are for the reduction of NOx emissions from natural gas fired furnaces and from NOx emissions from residential type natural gas fired water heaters. The working group meetings, next slide, please. The working group meetings for this rulemaking began in October of 2023 and have been ongoing. There was a public workshop in October of 2024 and was brought to our stationary source committee in that month as well. There was an additional working group meeting recently in December 2024. And when it went to our stationary source committee and then our board, they requested additional community outreach and engagement. And so working together across divisions, we've been developing a fact sheet, which I believe was brought here today in English and Spanish, that we have been taking out with us to meetings and events throughout the 4-county region, including outreach to all of, to our COGs. We've scheduled presentations at our COGs, which in the large ones, and we're still hearing back, but we have presentations. We went to San Bernardino COG, we're going to WR COG. We have presentations scheduled at Gateway as well as OC COG. And we have one coming up for CVAG and a presentation for SCAG as well, which will capture all of the cities in our basin. So the COG outreach is ongoing. We're working to schedule meetings with industry, trade groups, community organizations, such as like the Green Building Council, as you see here, and building and owners, many groups we're reaching out to. Oh, and I forgot to mention San Gabriel Valley COG. That would have been a big misstep. So we have something scheduled there as well. It's also being pushed out on social media with email blasts. And we just, our board just approved the contractors for the Go Zero incentive program, and we'll be working on developing outreach through those contracts. We're also working with the Southern California Regional Energy Network and the Inland Empire Regional Energy Network, which our board members had requested that we make sure that we're coordinating those efforts on Go Zero, and then workforce development. So today, next slide. Before us, the questions are on how we could further enhance our outreach. As you know, our board has delayed the public hearing until May of 2025. So between now and then, we are expecting to have another working group meeting, possibly in the early February timeframe, and then it will go back to stationary source likely in March. So I apologize in the slides that you have the dates are incorrect, because when we had to turn the slides in, those were kind of the dates we had on calendar, but then with board action, things should have shifted. And it's a great opportunity for us to conduct more outreach. So hoping today to hear from all of you on entities that we can reach out to, suggestions on trade associations, and really any other method of communication. We're really trying to be flexible and we know that there's populations and communities that we can always, find different methods. So really open. And then anything else on outreach that you would like to bring up.
Thank you for the summary, and just I'll open it up for any thoughts as to outreach, stakeholder groups that you think, far from an outreach perspective, any suggestions, and then any other general questions you might have for staff. Please go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem Brightling.
Thank you, Chair. So I know I'm the newest member on this committee, so I've been doing a lot of homework and reading and listening to the meetings that recently went on in December. And I'm just going to talk a little bit from the December 4th working group meeting, where the presentation, I think it's like 40 pages, was put together and presented. And I just wanted to go over the public outreach. So in sending notifications to social media and the Go Zero incentive program that will educate the public, I'm going to phrase the question, I might be saying it wrong, but this agency as a whole, with its rulemaking ability, is this the first time that a rule has actually or will be impacting the general public, not a trade industry, not a business, but actually all 17 million residents that the districts cover?
No, these two rules are existing rules and we're amending them.
Okay.
So there's been NOx standards in those rules, and the NOx standard has come down over time.
Okay.
But this is the first in these rules where we're doing a transition to zero emission technology. So moving away from gas furnaces, gas water heaters to zero emission technologies.
And the population that you are targeting is a combination of, let me move forward to that on that note. The population are all the households in the district.
It's
one of the populations, I should say, sorry.
right, but when we have these consumer type rules, the approach that we use is to implement these rules at the manufacturer, distributor, installer level. We don't enforce at a resident or specific household.
Okay. The question that I had, I'm just going to look at the site visit that was done on 10/23. Was that?
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to be very careful here. So we wanted to include this particular item on the agenda to discuss, and we very carefully looked at the charter, but then also we're very cognizant of the concern for a quorum of the board. And so Daphne had done a presentation last meeting that talked about that. And one of our concerns is that when we have the committee that staff reports to on the rule, and then we add the board members that are on local government, that we would potentially have what's called a serial meeting and a quorum of the board, which could, be problematic. So what we looked at is like what part of 1111, 1121 that fits within the charter and sort of the mission of LGSBA. And we felt like the communication piece of it and the outreach would dovetail very well. We really are looking and seeking to see how can we do the outreach better to inform people so they can inform us to make the best rule possible that we bring to the board for their decision. So I just want to be careful that we're not getting too deep into
Absolutely.
the rule.
I was just using the example. This is the district's example of outreach that I'm quoting from now.
Okay.
So the site visit that was done on 10/23 to Lake Arrowhead, Cedar Glen, and Running Springs, which combined total have a population of 15,300 residents. You did a presentation, I believe, at a hospital. I'm just quoting, it says hospital, restaurant, homes, and a recreation center. where this type of engagement, when you're going to these unincorporated communities, is great. But I know for the city of Upland, where we have, I think it's 27,000 households, there's no outreach done to, I can only speak for my city, I just learned of this rule and I'm bringing myself up to speed. But why is the district only focusing on going to COGS and not going to city council meetings and presenting to each city council? I know that's a huge task and the time was short. However, with the extension of time, being able to go to the council meetings and actually engage the public directly, I think could be a really good way to get the word across. As I went through all these notes, I didn't see that happen anywhere. And I know that's not something that the districts do typically because that's not usually your target audience. So that would be one of my recommendations is make sure that we target actually the public. And by doing so, at least city councils would be a great way to start.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate that comment. And we will do our best to get to as many city councils between now and then. That's why one of the reasons going to SCAG is helpful because we get very, very good attendance at SCAG. But I definitely hear you, and our GEO team who are assigned to go to council meetings and to county boards of supervisors will be taking this information out, as well as community events. So if there are specific community events or fairs or meetings that you would like us to try and get information to, I would love to get that information and we will do our best. We're a team of about 7-ish. So, but we will do our best to cover as much ground as possible and to network. And we're sharing the information too broadly with chambers as well, who are helping us push the information out, as well as other community groups. So that's like another way that we're able to expand is to ask to share.
And I appreciate that. In fact, I noticed by watching the last meeting and reading the comment letters that chambers did engage quite a bit throughout the district's coverage area, and but not so much cities. And chambers don't really talk to the general public. We need to talk to the general household. So that would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Other comments? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, although it was said earlier by staff that this, engagement to reach the community was back in October 2023, but is where the community outreach, where the community outreach started. However, as an elected official, and many of my colleagues, we were not aware of this notice of rules 1111 and 1121 until I was appointed at advisory board in 24. And I want to thank you to the appointer, which is our current chair, Mr. Carlos Rodriguez. Without his appointment, our city, we were like in the dark. We weren't informed of this. At least I should say properly informed of this. Although that my understanding I don't want to put this person's name on the hot seat, but there's an AQMD representative that are supposed to engage in our city. However, I just find out this morning, so I reached out to a few property owners and business owners, and I asked them, are you aware of this rule that AQMD is one to amend and impose the new mandate? And as a matter of fact, one of them said, oh, I spoke with the AQMD representative and I brought this up, and she said, oh, there's nothing to be concerned of. So I thought that was troubling. So is the information being properly, conveyed to the public? I'm very concerning. And why, if it's not, why is there such a rush? Want to put this mandate forward? Well, some stakeholders are not being properly informed. The answer was, oh, it's nothing to be concerned of. That's troubling to me as an elected official. Second, there is, I sit on the SCAG, and I addressed this to our SCAG, who is the Chamber of Commerce. And I asked them, are you properly informed by this? They weren't aware either. So I feel that's quite a few of our stakeholders in our cities are not being properly informed of this rule. And this is going to affect, it's going to impact, I should say, a lot of residents, business owners, and particularly also low-income resident. Because, it may triggers, it's not just a cost of the equipment, but some family might have to go to the permitting process. That's going to be extremely costly to them. Not only the permits, but sometimes they have to change out the electrical panel. Who's going to cover those costs? So I'm really concerning on that. I appreciate that we had a letter of oppositions from OCOX, and I concur with them. And also there was an article, and I'm very concerned of that article, which was in the OC Register that was published in December 27, 24 by Supervisor Don Wagner. And I concur with him as well. It is concerning. So my question is, why is AQMD so in a hurry to want to put this mandate to our Californian when I feel that the information is not out there, whether it's conveyed or informed to certain group, but not everyone. So that's concerning. Having said this, I also would like to see if this advisory board would see matters that important as such that will give the authority, the chair, to call a special meetings because they want to pass this mandate very shortly, and where there's no opportunity for us to give feedback. They go to decide before we can, get the public informed properly and give our comments to the governing board. So that's my message to AQMD. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Any other comments regarding outreach or otherwise? And staff, if there's responses along the way that you have, feel free to do that as well. Okay, so let's go with just down the line with David, Bill, and then Rita.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've worked for a public agency for over 35 years, and I'm a little perplexed about how to efficiently use staff time. Going to all these individual entities, it's very time consuming. It seems like it'd be very efficient to call a press conference. The local news media is very apt to listen to this, spread the word, and you get information out to the public quite quickly. When I've talked to folks that will have to implement this, they do not know anything about it. So I think it really needs to be very basic. Go to local news stations, call a press conference, explain what's going on, and the word will get out very quickly. So that's maybe a way the staff could be more efficient and get the word out quickly. That would be my suggestion. Hopefully real quick here, looking at the charter, the purpose of this group is to provide advice. It's an advisory group. And as such, because we're experts in our field and represent certain sectors of the public and the public agencies, I think it's appropriate for us to give our advice as to here's what this group of people believe. And that perspective, I think there needs to be a little bit of a bigger picture perspective on both of these rules. As hopefully everyone in this room is aware, the purpose of this rule is to reduce NOx to get to ozone attainment. To channel our former executive officer, Barry Wallerstein, you could get rid of every stationary source in this basin, you will not achieve attainment. And now with the news that CARB has withdrawn their waiver for advanced clean fleets, I would argue there's no way that we'll ever get to attainment in this basin without EPA stepping up. It's not appropriate to go to the homeowners and say, you need to spend all this money when we know it's not going to get to the end goal. As such, and for other reasons I could get into, I would like to entertain a motion that this group provides feedback to the board saying, we do not recommend that they proceed with these rules under this situation. So just motion on the table for people's consideration to provide advice.
Second.
Yeah, Chair, I just want to say the agenda item is outreach, so I don't think it's appropriate to have this motion on the table because the agenda item is outreach. We shouldn't be discussing the substantive issues of the rules. I understand it's of great concern. There are opportunities during the working group meeting and also a stationary source and at the public hearings to provide comments on that. We do understand in this instance, we're seeking, the agenda item is on the topic of outreach regarding these rules. So thank you for suggesting, press conferences, potentially reaching out to cities individually. So that's kind of like the information that we're seeking from this group.
So in the future, I want to jump in, then clarify for me what, in order for that type of motion to occur, is it because it was agendized to say outreach? So how would it have to be agendized in order to entertain that motion?
We would need to specifically just have a discussion on the substance of the proposed amended rules. Like here, it's very clear, it says outreach on the agenda item. So it's a narrower scope.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, in order to entertain a motion in a second on the floor, it would need to be agendized in what way?
In a broader format, but as Susan had mentioned previously, and we had discussed in our last meeting, the concern here is having a quorum of the governing board members discussing, participating in the decision on these rules, because it goes before other committees as well. So that's why we were seeking to avoid that issue by only asking about outreach.
Right, and when we had our meeting in December, we talked about quorums absent voting members to allow for letters as such.
Yes, but there's also the concern of discussion, participating in discussion. So we thought this would be a more cleaner way to deal with this issue that's been recurring, right? The concern for governing board members to be discussing, participating in decisions, because it's also concerns because sometimes the group members change too. So we're constantly looking at the membership of the different committees, which committees has these issues gone before. It gets a little bit complicated.
Yeah, I think what's complicated is in December, we talked about a pathway in order for them to be able to go on the record with the position. Now they want to do a position and they're being told they can't take a position. After December, we highlighted a pathway for them to be able to do a position, which included members of the voting governing board abstaining. So it's just from the last meeting in November to now, when we talked about a pathway, then we're trying to enact that pathway. When we put it on the agenda, we highlighted, here's the pathway. Now we're trying to exercise the pathway and we're being told, no, we can't. So it's just perplexing.
Apologies, like in this instance too, right now, we can't open it up because of the way it was placed on the agenda. If they want to move, have a motion regarding communications outreach, that's something that the advisory group can entertain. I hear what you're saying, but in this case, the item was specifically on the agenda as outreach. So that's why now it's out. The other issue is now it's outside of the scope of the agenda item.
Well, it's there's some time between now and May, so maybe there's well, we'll see what other feedback we have on outreach, and then if there's the potential for scheduling a meeting between now and May to properly notice this, agendize it, because I'm hearing that it's really because it wasn't agendized in a certain way. So again,
Order, may I?
No, not
Mr.
yet.
Chair? Okay.
No. I'm going to let Susan comment here.
So the issue on, one issue is the agenda, but then the other issue is if we go too much into the discussion of the rule, which is still in development, and we present it to stationary, 6 members there, members on LGSBA, board members on LGSBA, we start to have a quorum of the board. So that's the tricky part. And so
If the advisory group
by themselves,
hypothetically had a stance of support or opposition or whatever it might be, and they go on the record, then if it was subsequently shared, I'm just trying to follow the serial meeting point.
so I think what we should do is probably have like, we have really been thinking about how we can make this work for this group so
Yeah.
they can weigh in and,
That's
you know,
what we
provide
did in
advice.
December.
Yeah, but so
Yeah.
where it's like even again, because this is an even more tricky issue as it relates to a rule that for the quorum
Okay.
of the board.
So why
So
don't we do this? Well, the direction is very clear. We don't have ability to act on the motion in a second, so we don't really know the well, other than that. Second, why don't we, it's clear that there's an intent to make, to advise.
right.
So my direction would be based on that to clarify the pathway, which I thought we had established in our last meeting when we had a full-blown meeting agenda about how to go on the record, just like they were wanting to do right now with governing board members not being counted. And we even went into what quorum would we need to have in order to do that. We went into painstaking detail. And so now they're wanting to act on that. I'm hearing that can't do that today. So in order that we'll just for this, these 2 rules in particular, how is it that it would need to be agendized in order for them to be able to provide a position and not create any issues that we thought we were mitigating by having the governing board members on advisory group abstaining? I thought we had that pathway. Clearly we don't. So I'd like to hear about what needs to be done. And then once we have clarity on that, then we'll see if we can act on getting it on the agenda and perhaps scheduling a meeting just with that item before May. And you know, that could be a pathway potentially between now and May, having another meeting just on the matter and getting an update on outreach as well since then. Because this is clearly hearing concerns about some of the outreach. And I think that in good faith that there will be some progress on that. And so it'd be great to hear about that again with an abbreviated agenda to consider. So so for now, we all understand that, you know, the situation is we're not able to act on the motion in a second, so we'll kind of put that aside. Is there any other input on outreach that you would like to share collectively? I want to be mindful of the time and where we're at on only having 1 agenda item, and we got 3 more to go. So let's try to be as efficient as we can.
Yeah, Mr.
I'm not ready for public comment. I'm talking to the advisory group right now.
I have a point of order before I get
All right,
into
go
the
ahead.
substance of outreach. I hear the concerns, but like the chairman said, we've already discussed that there is no quorum. There's only 1 SCAQMD board member in this room. That's Mr. Rodriguez. He is a non-voting member of that committee. The point of order is there's a motion on the table and a second. Staff, I hear the concerns, but they have no authority to override that unless the maker of the motion withdraws it. So there's a motion on the floor with a second. So there needs to be discussion. And then staff has no authority to make comments to override that and derail that process.
Okay,
That's my
Rita.
point.
So I'm going to, as chair, I'm going to ask that we not proceed with that because I don't want to do anything that would, I want to be above reproach with respect to being able to maintain my ability to vote on the matter. Period, end of sentence. So respectfully, we're going to hold off on taking any vote on that motion in a second so that we can get a clear pathway identified, which I thought we had, but we clearly don't. So we're going to hold on taking that action because again, I'm not going to do anything. I want to be above reproach with respect to being able to maintain my ability to vote. So I appreciate you guys, your position and wanting to take that, but again, I think I'm clear on my reason. So what we have today is a discussion on outreach. We've gotten some really good input. And before we move off of that topic, is there any other input on outreach? I don't want to entertain any more on the other topic because we already know how we're handling that. So please, let's focus on outreach. And then I want to go to any other public comment, and then we're going to move off the item in the interest of being productive on our agenda today. So Bill, and then we'll go back to the Vice Mayor.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to build on part of David's comments on outreach, especially with the recommendation to go to the media. Some of you, or maybe all of us, can remember when the television stations moved from analog to digital. If you didn't have a digital TV, you had to go out and buy one. That was an impact on the public. There were months and months of news stories and information on radio and television alerting people to this imminent change. The same thing is now happening with respect to the real IDs. May is the deadline for that. And I understand that about 2 in 10 people have the real ID with the hologram on it. It's just bad policy for this agency or any agency to foist on an unsuspecting public 2 rules that affect residences and businesses, especially small businesses, and mandate that they change out their water heaters, furnaces, small water heaters and furnaces by a date certain, without fully informing them of not only of the mechanics of the rule, but also the potential costs involved. This is going to require an investment of thousands of dollars to people on fixed incomes, people in poor communities, and mom and pop businesses.
Bill, do you have a recommendation on outreach?
Yes, and that is to engage the LA Times, the Orange County Register, the Press Enterprise, the local TV stations and radio stations, and set up a series of informational stories, interviews, if you will, with district people, and have them sufficiently explain exactly what is going to take place. People don't go to COG meetings, ordinary citizens don't. My neighbor, I live in Orange County, fairly well-to-do neighborhood. Half the people that I've spoken to range from never heard of it before to what is the AQMD? So that's the level of knowledge in my particular neighborhood. So I would encourage the staff to engage the media, the editorial boards on these media outlets, and proceed that way. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to wrap up with Rita. Any recommendations on outreach?
Yes. So my recommendation would be related to what Mr. Bowie and Mr. Brightling brought up, specifically to city councils, because this is the local government / small business advisory committee. And I don't think the outreach to city councils has been appropriately done from the feedback that we're getting from our city council members on this committee. But I am sensitive to the fact that staff is limited on this matter. But maybe we can have an email sent out to every city council member. And I'm sure that staff already, might have some list, or even the city manager, rather than going through the COGS only. So that would be my specific recommendation. The other thing is specifically on the outreach flyer that was sent, where it says appliances are voluntarily replaced. That's not necessarily true. If the water heater goes out, the resident is forced to buy a new one, and they will not be able to buy natural gas. They will be compelled to buy electric ones. So that specific outreach statement, I think that needs to be clarified on the flyer for outreach that's going out. And then my last suggestion on the outreach is to look at the emissions comparison during PSPS events for backup generators. The California Air Resources Board recently sent out an announcement about how they're waiving the rules on backup generators. Some of these generators are diesel fuel. So can the outreach include an analysis on the emissions comparison? And by that, I mean comparing the emissions from what a natural gas heater at a residence would emit versus what those emissions would be during a PSPS event when generators are put in. So those are my recommendations for outreach. Thank you.
Just a quick announcement, sorry, Chair. In the public comment queue online, there are already 5 people. So in order to get through the agenda today and hear the other very important items on rulemaking and compliance calendar, would recommend that we close the queue after Samsung guest.
And do we have any, including here in person, to add to that? I do. I think we do. I think.
I've had my hand up for a half an hour. Jeff Blake.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. That I was inquiring about any advisory group member that's online. So appreciate your patience, and we do, just to clarify, we'll add our attendees here as well to the upcoming public comment, please, and then we'll close it at that point. And then we'll go ahead and have Jeff go ahead and comment, please.
Yeah, I just spoke to 2. I live down in the San Clemente area, and I just spoke to 2 of our former mayors, and they were totally unaware of this. And just recently, I decided to buy a electric vehicle, and I called my provider and asked what would it take to set up a proper panel in my house. And I was absolutely blown away to learn so many of the houses here in Dana Point, San Clemente, San Juan Capistrano, this whole area, these homes were many of them were built in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And most of these houses are only being fed 120, 100 amp service. So I inquired what would it cost me to upgrade my system. And in order to do it, because I'm pretty well maxed out now at 100 amps, and I just spend thousands of dollars on my heater and water heater, buying new stuff. Anyway, I found out the cost for me to upgrade was absolutely astounding. and basically impossible. Astounding in the sense that when they put these homes in, they did direct bury cable. So you can't pull a new line in. You have to, every house is going to have to drill from the street to their home. They're going to have to put a new panel in. And they told me my cost was going to be $12,000 to $15,000. That's an additional cost that all these people are going to face if they have to go to electric heaters and home heaters. I hope you're including that cost, plus the fact that if everybody on the street had to upgrade to 200 amps or 300 amps, whatever they chose to go for.
Sorry to interrupt, but please be reminded that the agenda item is on outreach.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, Jeff.
Nobody knows about it.
Another 30 seconds to wrap up, Jeff, on any thoughts.
All right. So I just wanted to pass on to Susan and anybody that's sitting on the committee developing this rule to also include the incredible cost of upgrading the electrical service to these homes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, so we're going to go to public comment, but I would say that with respect to Mayor Pro Tem Breitling, Mayor Stewart, and Vice Mayor Bowie, if there is an opportunity with our staff to look at opportunities to collaborate with them and to see about getting information out to their respective stakeholders and say, for instance, apartment properties, low-income housing properties, senior groups, and other stakeholder groups in coordination with them and their city manager, public information officer, and to see how the information can be strategically shared at that city level. That could very well address also some of the comments about the general, community-wide type of non-cog centric, and that approach at a city in a layered, strategic, targeted outreach, utilizing the city's existing information apparatus. Could be a collaboration that allows there to be the information that we have, this handout, and then getting the word out as to if you have questions, comments, being able to have that opportunity for input from the community to enhance that. That very well also may be able to then really be in short order and really looking at the remainder of this month to get that going. Those collaborative dialogues. Then it could certainly be highlighted to the cogs and say, hey, look at what's being done here by these other cities, and it could be a model for enhancing. Again, you have 7 staff, so being able to collaborate and have the cities and their communication efforts be partnering to get the information out. So rather than it be your 7 staff trying to reach out to the apartment property owners in every city, each city can then do that and then get that information and have that pipeline of communication that begins. So if that is something that you 3 would be open to, and then also that would give you opportunities for some additional input that then could help move this along at a broader scale, as far as being able to, each of you are also involved in so many other city type of efforts. It could be maybe mentioned at SCAG that these opportunities are happening. It could be mentioned at the other outreaches that these things are happening. So again, I think just being able to lead by example initially that we're doing, and certainly we'll do the same in Yorba Linda, and then kind of get the word out to our counterparts, and then we can work together on that. That's something, okay. And staff, does that make sense as far as some direction, as far as being able to have that level of coordination with, okay?
Mr. Chair, if you could allow me 5 seconds.
Sure.
I would like to add, because this reference to the outreach, to concur with advisory Rita and Mr. Bill, is it mentions this outreach is not particularly to Southern California. When Mr. Bill referenced to the news and the media and so forth, it needs to be reach out Northern California, because you're making a mandate that's affecting everyone, not just Southern California. So that meant that information must reach up north as well.
It's the rule is going to
Right.
apply within AQMD service area.
Yeah, anywhere there's AQMD, it needs to be outreach.
Exclusive.
Okay.
Exclusively. So that I think our concentration, just to be clear, is really trying to focus in on our service area of AQMD. But I understand that, you know, the more communication, the better. But just from the standpoint of setting our expectations, we already have our hands full.
Right.
Trying to outline this to as many in our service area. But point taken. And I'm going to just say that we appreciate everyone's advisory group's input on the outreach. We do have some public comment, and we also do have some offline homework we're going to do as far as options in the future to look into that, how that motion second could be considered in the future.
So quick point of clarification for Vice Mayor Bowie is that Northern California already has a rule on the books that requires this.
Okay, so we'll go to our public comment. Maybe we'll start in person first before we go online.
3 minutes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. My name is Nick Wilson. I'm a husband, father. I'm a retired police officer. I was just made aware of this within the last 24 hours. I don't have anything prepared, so I'm just going to speak from the heart. California is broke. When I was just hearing those that are not in favor of this, you know, letting the public know thing, that's very concerning. You're going to bankrupt, if you push this rule through, you're going to bankrupt small businesses. Your California homeowners, residents are already struggling. The mismanagement of taxpayer dollars in this state is absolutely disgusting. It's going to cost between $6,000 estimated and $20,000 per resident. No one can afford that. Okay. But this isn't just impacting low income. And for businesses estimated between $300,000 and $800,000, you're going to cripple small business. You're going to cripple our economy. So I don't know who is in favor at this table for this policy, for this rule to go through. But if you are in favor of it, if you're in favor of this, you're on the wrong side of history. Californians can't even purchase eggs. They're struggling to purchase groceries. I see it every single day. What's the rush?
I hear your passion, but please remember that this item is on outreach on the proposed amendment.
Okay, well, you want to talk about outreach. Why is there even a debate about transparency? I'm from the public, and it was hard for me to even get here. I picked up your flyer here, and you're talking about the health benefits of implementing this rule. 4,000 premature deaths, 16,000 cases of newly onset asthma, 4,000 emergency room visits. The way you're selling this to the public, which I don't even know that the public has this. I picked this up on a flyer and just learned about this in the last 24 hours. We're all struggling. So you want to talk about public outreach. If the public knew about this, they would be outraged. This is the worst policy that just compounds everything that's going on in Sacramento in terms of bankrupting the state, whether it's the homeless industrial complex, whether, you know, all of the environmental stuff that we're spending billions of dollars on, this is not necessary. This is absolutely not necessary. So I understand that all of you here have a job to do and that you might be representing certain special interest groups. So I'm just going to ask this and leave you with this. If you've got children, understand that your legacy is going to be contingent on what you do forward. Are you going to leave them with more financial issues?
We're at time, Mr. Wilson.
Yeah. Do the right thing. California is absolutely sick and tired of this nonsense. This is disgusting.
Thank you,
I'm
Mr.
just going to say
Wilson.
one thing here.
Okay.
I don't have time to be here. I have to go pick up my son. I got a lot going on. You guys look within and do the right thing. This is appalling. Appalling.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
You're welcome.
We have our next comment.
Hello, my name is Eric Stalter, and like Mr. Wilson, I just recently found out, in fact, I was informed by Mr. Wilson of what was going on, so I decided to drive an hour from my home to be here. I want to start by saying this. I feel like this is less about electric appliances and more about imposition of somebody's will on the people of this state, and that is a problem. Now, we're talking about outreach, right? Let's start with what was called here today a fact sheet. This was called, if I'm holding in my hand, what was called a fact sheet. Am I incorrect about that? If not, then what I would suggest is you place facts on here. You cannot tell the public that there are going to be prevented 4,000 premature deaths. I'd like to know where that fact came from. Also, 16,000 cases of newly onset asthma will be prevented by this change. I'd like to know where that fact came from. I would also like to know on this flyer the facts about the environmental impact that will result from the digging of new trenches, from the mining of the materials that is required for these changes. You guys have not thought this through. You have not thought this through. You are representing a system, and you're going to push through, again, the imposition of somebody's will on the people based on this system. So outreach should include facts. Be responsible with those facts. Inform the community of the facts. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments in person? Okay. All right. So we'll go to online and Deborah Camp.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Deborah Cam, and I'm the Southern California Chair of the Office of Administrative Hearings Special Education Advisory Committee. I'm very concerned about the impact of the rules on school districts and county offices of education and what types of outreach and communication has been done to those local agencies. School district budgets are planned years in advance, and they're actually based on state funding. So we're already hearing about potential teacher layoffs due to budget shortfalls, such as in Santa Ana Unified School District, where I am in Orange County. The costs of these are going to be increasing financial burdens for these school districts and harm teachers as well as students. I'm very concerned that that the school districts are not going to be able to plan for this, especially since there has been no outreach apparently, as was shown in the previous slide. I didn't hear anything about school districts or county offices of education, and I'm not sure if you have any representation of those entities on this advisory committee. I would also like to say, as someone who's worked in marketing and communications for over 20 years, this is such a huge endeavor. This is not something that you slap together and haphazardly go out and talk to certain constituents and whoever you happen to have a partnership with. I'm really kind of appalled at the lack of a strategic communication plan, which would be necessary for anything of this scale. A communication plan would incorporate repeated communications. People do not understand this kind of thing from just one communication. You need it in multiple languages. You need to alert people as to what the resources are for financial assistance, because as has been discussed, most people are not going to be able to pay for this. So I'm very, very troubled and baffled by the lack of a strategic communication plan, about the lack of communication to school districts, and this harming students and parents and teachers and administrators throughout this area. This is going to have a huge impact. And when these entities take years to budget these kinds of things in, I don't know what kind of services will be omitted and how many teachers will be laid off. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next speaker is,
3 minutes, so he can speak
okay,
in
so,
general.
okay, so
The
do I need
next
to mention
speaker,
that or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Chair, the next speaker in the queue is Mr. Harvey Etter, but he used all of his 3 minutes on agenda items. And so he may speak again in general public comment. The next speaker is Andrea.
Andrea, go ahead and,
Can you hear me now?
yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I understand about the outreach. However, as a parent or as a resident, we have heard zilch, absolutely nothing. So I have no idea what you guys are doing, but it's not good. And your mission statement is to clean the air and protect the health of all residents in the South Coast Air District through practical and innovative strategies. As far as I'm concerned, nothing's practical, and your outreach has touched none. How can mandating every household use electric for hot water heaters, furnaces, protecting the health and practical purposes for residents when the power is shut down, as we have all experienced by the winds and fires? You would be causing more harm to all residents, plus financial burden. By requiring this mandate, you are causing, well, financial burden. However, the elderly are on fixed income. They could never afford this. And most of them have wounds and they need care and hot water. And that to me would be elder abuse that you guys are implementing on people. Next, we have families with children who can barely meet costs of groceries and cost of living to convert their homes to electric water heaters is not practical for them. You are not protecting them. You will be causing harm, especially if they have special needs children with sensory issues and the power goes out. There's no way that a sensory issue child could handle cold water for 4 days, as we have just experienced the power outage here. You know, and I know that our power will continue to be turned off and the residents will not have hot water. You will be causing more harm than good and endangering lives.
Thanks for your comment. I know you're,
clearly
please, limit your comment to outreach, which is on the agenda. There's opportunity in the working group meeting, stationary source committee, public hearing to provide comment on the substance of the rule. But in terms of right now, if you could please limit your comment to outreach. Thank you.
I was just getting to that point before you interrupted me. As far as outreach, nobody has heard of this. Nobody knows about it. I have notified many people and asked them, and I have been on committees before. There is a hidden agenda which we do not appreciate. And when power goes out, we will be left with nothing. And outreach has not touched one person that I'm aware of. And you will, this is to me so upsetting. And you are not going to help the air quality at all by by mandating this. And the outreach clearly needs to state this. I want to see all the facts. I want to see the scientific evidence that you need to provide to all consumers. Thank you.
Next speaker is Dave.
Yes, good morning, or good afternoon now, I guess. My name is Dave Palmer, and I am in the mental health industry. I specifically work with short-term residential treatment facilities. There are thousands of them throughout the state of California. Actually, most of them are in Southern California, and we deal with the most vulnerable among us, people, the youth that are foster youth, probation youth. And my concern is that we've heard nothing of this. I have part of our associations. There's been no talk of this. And so again, outreach is not working. It's not getting out there. My concern with the flyer that was brought up is, again, I concur with the idea that it's being presented as facts, and it's being put out there as information that's focusing on selling the idea. I'm not hearing anything in the outreach where there's opportunity for feedback. And here you have the public coming to you, trying to give you information and, feedback, but yet we're being squelched. I know there was talk of closing the queue and not letting the public speak. These are things that are concerning, because also what I heard this morning is that, this isn't even going to achieve the goal of the emissions goal. And also in the fact sheet, that I would like to see, what emissions tests have been done regarding gas water heaters. And so, I'm not seeing where that impact is being put out. The gentleman who shared his specific example of what it's going to cost him to do these repairs, if the STRTPs that I spoke of had to do this, I mean, they're already operating on a shoestring budget. These would put them out of business, and then those most vulnerable youth would have no place to go. Also, just from a standpoint of a public member who's not real familiar, there's been many acronyms used in today's meeting that I have no idea what you're talking about. I could have walked in here and just used my acronyms from the mental health world, and you wouldn't know what I'm talking about. So I think as a courtesy that it would be good for you to help the public as part of your outreach, to help them understand what you're talking about and not use jargon from your industry that the general public does not understand. I know in reading the Orange County Register's article, I've been very concerned and alarmed. I'm thankful for them getting the word out and having some outreach that's working. But every single person that I've talked to within my industry and outside, just my friends and family, they have not heard of this at all. And as a matter of fact, when I mention it to them, they don't believe me, because that's how absurd this is. They don't believe that this is something that our government would impose upon us. So I would just encourage you to make sure that you're touching the real public and that they're having an opportunity to hear about this, and you have a mechanism for feedback as far as the impact of the rules that you're wanting to put in place. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have any other? Samsung, our next speaker. Samsung, are you still there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. I'm not understanding that we're talking about outreach that hasn't even happened. And then we're going to be outreaching for something that is, well, all I heard was bureaucracy, which kind of explains this whole thing, and stakeholders, which is, I think, why we're here at this table. It's a really strange thing in this state of California that the people who are making the laws and the rules that we all have to supposedly follow are the ones who know the least about a subject. We already have complete lack of electricity. Does anybody happen to know where electricity comes from? Because making electricity isn't very clean either. Natural gas sure is. So I just don't even know why this is even a subject. Everything our government in this state does is a waste of time. It doesn't help anyone. It puts a lot of money in a lot of big corporations' pockets, and it hurts the little guy. And that's all we're doing. It'd be nice if we could have some time go into something that actually makes a difference and helps the people of the state as they're fleeing to get away from this place, because it's a ridiculous place to live with ridiculous rules made by people who have no clue what they're doing. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. And if you're still on, what was your first name? I don't think we had that.
Nope, it didn't get put in there. My first name's Nina. And the two people who were there and spoke there in person, 100% right on target. I hope you guys listen.
We're listening and appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Okay.
We do have also Maria Isabel Arias. If you want to finish your comment.
Yes, good morning again. I just have a comment regarding outreach. First of all, I would recommend highly that you learn about the Brown Act and public comments. It is not only disrespectful to interrupt the people when they're providing their public comment, it is a violation of their First Amendment rights. And if you want to outreach, respect the people that you're outreaching. It is very disrespectful, especially for the lady that has been interrupting many people here today, that you interrupt them in the middle of their public comment. A public comment is the person's opinion, and they are choosing to say what they need to say to you. You must listen entirely without any comment, with any objections. So please, if you want to outreach, begin by respecting the people that want to comment. That's number one. On the fact that you did not allow the discussion on the how to outreach, please learn about what the Brown Act does state. If you have a broad agenda item and it's not specific and is it within the subject, you must discuss it if you have a discussion item on the table. But I'm going to ask you respectfully to educate yourself on that Brown Act. And last but not least, in my community, I attend city council meetings, school district meetings, and none of the general public is informed of what you're doing today. So I highly appreciate it that you please ensure this is out to the public, because it will impact everybody's financial situation. Again, you're going to impact our low income and Hispanic community and the most vulnerable people within California. Thank you.
Okay, that will conclude our public comments for today. Really appreciate everyone who drove out here today in person and those who took the time as well online for their comments on this item. We'll go ahead and take the collective input from the advisory group today, and I think there was a lot of really good ideas, so we'll look forward to seeing some more progress on the outreach on a number of fronts. With that, we'll close that item and move over to an overview of the 2025 rule forecast. And we have Michael Morris here. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Mike Morris, Planning and Rules Manager. I'll be sharing with you a little bit about what we did in 2024 and a look forward in 2025. Next slide, please. So our rules generally come from our 2022 Air Quality Management Plan or other plans like our PM plans, which are adopted to address our efforts to come into attainment for ozone and PM standards. And so generally, those AQMPs spell out how we plan to move forward, trying to achieve those goals. Our last air quality management plan did focus on zero emission technologies. Next slide, please. So in addition to the plans, there are some other reasons why we do rule changes. They include the AB 617 bill that requires community emission reduction plans. And sometimes the communities come to us and say that they have certain issues that they'd like to the address. So we also develop rules to do that as well. Additionally, there are things that pop up either through the EPA or some type of administrative activity where we do come forward with rules. So that generally is why we come forward with rules. Next slide, please. So in 2024, there's a list of the rules that we have here that we adopted. And I'm going to go through each one of those fairly quickly to give you a sense of what we did last year. Next slide, please. So our first is a fence line monitoring rule, rules, I should say. One is for the refineries themselves, and then there's a second one that addresses smaller refinery associated type facilities, basically to require fence line monitoring around those facilities, as well as expand the chemicals that will be monitored and improving the outreach to the public. Next slide, please. The second is, or the next rule is for flares at refineries, addressing the standards specifically for SOx, but also the other pollutants to lower those standards and address emission reductions from refinery flares. Next slide, please. We also did last year pass a rule for large water heaters and small boilers. This is a rule very similar to 1111, 1121, where it does affect the general public. It includes pool heaters and smaller boilers and heaters that are in, say, apartment buildings and things like that. It is a zero emission rule. It's very similar again to 1111, 1121 that will require, upon replacement, switching over to zero emission technologies. There is a technology check-in as part of that rule in 2027, basically to ensure that the technology is ready for imposition. Obviously, in all of our rules, if we find that something is not doable, we do come back and make amendments, and you're going to see in several of the upcoming slides where we've done just that. Next slide, please. This rule was a major milestone. It's our rule 20 for freight rail yards as part of our indirect source rules. One of the, it did require that the facilities do basically what the state requires for rails. It is contingent upon EPA approval and CARB getting waiver authorization. We did hear just a few days ago that CARB is not going to pursue that waiver authorization, which means that this rule won't go into effect until that does happen. And basically at this point, we'll wait and see if conditions change where we might feel that that waiver would get approved. Next slide, please. This Rule 1165 addressed the one facility that was a municipal incinerator. That facility was in the process of basically it's 30 years old, and they were deciding what would be next for them. We said that they would have to improve their controls, and they decided that they would rather change the facility to a food waste processing facility. So they're in the midst of that. But this rule would apply if any other future incinerators did come to Southern California. Next slide, please. Another rule that was amended because of differing circumstances from when it was originally adopted. So this rule 1135 is our power plant rule. It only affects one facility, this amendment, and that's the energy generating facility on Catalina Island. And it did look at updating the requirements for that and including zero emission technology in the future for that particular project. Next slide, please. We did include a suite of rules that address leak detection and repair at oil and gas and petroleum type facilities, basically to implement a new technology, optical gas imaging, which makes leak detection much easier, finding the leaks faster, would lead to emission reductions. Next slide, please. Another rule that passed last year was regarding motor vehicle and mobile equipment coating operations, otherwise known as auto body shops. And here we are addressing a compound, parachlorobenzotrifluoride, that was exempted in our rules more than a decade ago, and recently was found that it is a carcinogen. And so we are addressing those rules by allowing the formulators of those coatings to temporarily raise their limits, give them a few years to reformulate, and then lower back down those limits. We don't want to necessarily impact the auto body shops in a way that they won't be able to operate, so we're providing that rule flexibility. And you'll see this in a couple of slides for what we're going to do next year. Next slide, please. And then one of the last ones I'll be talking about is our nitric acid tank rule. That was our last rule to adopt BART technologies, or best available retrofit control technologies for all of our NOx sources. This was the very last one. As part of the AB 617 program, we had to revisit all those, and so that was included. And now some of these larger tanks will need to have controls on them. Next slide, please. So jumping into 2025, we do have several rules that will be looking at zero emission technologies. There was plenty of discussion about 1111, 1121, so I'll leave that there. But we are looking at larger boilers and water heaters. These are the ones that are industrial sized for the most part. We're also looking at commercial cooking and the opportunities there to adopt zero emission technologies where they're available. As I mentioned, for the auto body shops, we're doing a similar process for aerospace, metal, wood coating, solvents, and eventually all the various coating, printing, adhesive type operations that we have to phase out this chlorobenzotrifluoride material. Again, following that process where if they do need time to reformulate, that will provide that time. Next slide, please. We are on the rule forecast calendar looking at the reclaim transition and seeing what we need to do in order to end or sunset the reclaim program. If that's going to continue forward, we need to amend our new source review rules. The challenge has been to find a way to make sure that facilities that are exiting reclaim have the offsets necessary so that they can continue to conduct their business and grow and modernize. We have several toxics regulations that we're working on, primarily focusing on hexavalent chromium and making sure that those types of emissions are reduced as much as possible. And we continue work on our ports indirect source rule. The focus there being on providing, providing the infrastructure needed for zero emission technologies. Next slide, please. And this will be my last slide. So we are implementing rules to implement our PM plan. Those would be related to wood burning, composting, some livestock operations, and char broilers or commercial cooking. We are looking at some new monitoring rules for toxic air contaminants, looking at how to address emissions from emergency generators, also looking at how we might be able to update our mobile source rules, and lastly, updating our fee rules. And that concludes my presentation. Next slide, sorry. Next slide, sorry. Yeah, so, and that's our contact information. Thank you for your attention.
That's a lot to cover in a short time, so thank you. And we'll open it up to any questions. I'm going to remind everyone we are on a goal of ending our meetings in 90 minutes. We're already over time, so we'll going to make this the last item of the day and move the other agenda item to our next meeting. But I want to make sure that you all have an opportunity to ask any questions or comments from staff on the scope of what was discussed here. Go ahead, Dave. And
Mr. Chair, thanks, Mike, for the presentation. Real quick, when we're following the AQMD, the roadmap to clean the air, how do you pick which rules to work on first?
There are opportunities. Sometimes the technologies become available. There are interest levels in particular topics, but there are the priority of them doesn't necessarily get directed. Like there isn't a specific way that we go about this. I think generally we'll see a particular industry or technology that we think might be available and start to pursue it.
Vice Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to ask a follow-up question to that. Do you also take in consideration that certain of this rule might, the business owners, you know what, I'm leaving California. There's too many layers on top of layers. So how do you factor those risk potential?
So it's a very much a concern to make sure that we provide rules that allow people to remain competitive. I think, from the business side of it. And so when we do look at that, we are aware of the cost effectiveness that we have in these rules, and also the challenges that they may face, competing against people who are outside of our area, whether they're in California, the rest of the United States, outside of the United States, and how they might be able to compete with them. So those are things that we definitely keep in mind as we go through the rule process. The stakeholders make their voices very clear during that process about the things that they think they can and can't do, and often share that in the working group meetings, in the stationary source committee, in the public hearing. So that's something that is very much at the forefront of our mind when we're making rules.
Let me just quickly follow up just from the standpoint of what I've been seeing on the governing board. When it comes to the rulemaking, it's really driven by federal attainment requirements in many cases. We're not sitting around just trying to think of new regulations for the sake of doing that. It's really about meeting strict federal requirements and then trying to do everything we can to be innovative and doing it in a way that takes into the balance of what the concerns are with meeting the admissions requirements. So it is a very challenging because they are extremely strict, and if non-compliance comes with penalties, and we are already in some cases out of attainment. So just from the challenge is there's been a lot of progress, and we're trying to continue to squeeze even more emissions progress, and it just gets with each iteration gets even more challenging to make that progress and do it in a way that's balanced. So again, just wanted to highlight that when it comes to all of what you're seeing, many times, if in almost every case, it's pointing back to us being able to follow the law and what we're being required. And if anything else you have on that, Susan.
I just want to add that I don't do rulemaking now, but I did rulemaking for over 30 years. And, sort of just moving through the agency and then, working with staff to do rulemaking. We've sort of trained everybody to take facilities that are going to say that they're going to go out of business because of a rule very seriously. And we meet with the facility to understand what their concern is, and we modify the provisions so we can ensure that we're really listening and addressing what their concerns and needs are. And then we present this information to the governing board, and we also do a socioeconomic analysis, which is the regional jobs analysis looking at it. And so many of our rules will say there's jobs foregone, and it sounds like there's job loss, but it's the shifts in that a new job wouldn't be created because of a rule or other things. But we take the economic side of it, the potential job loss, or a company saying they're going to go out of business very, very seriously, and really try to work in the provisions so that doesn't happen. So the balance of air quality and economics can occur.
Okay, so again, part of what I'm trying to accomplish is making sure I'm respectful of everyone's busy calendar. We're already over time, and so I'm going to have each Paul, Bill, Rita, I saw your cards up. I'm going to each give you a minute, and then we're going to go to public comment.
Testing, testing. I have an easy one for you, Michael, and real quick. On the fence line and community monitoring, the two rules, isn't that private sector? Private sector fixes the leaks. There's no loss of money or time for AQMD other than the fact they found the leak. Is that correct?
So the fence line monitoring is a little different than the leak detection rules. The fence line monitoring is basically, continuously checking to see what is crossing the fence line going into the community or surrounding these areas. For the most part, yes, that is handled by these facilities and they take care of that themselves. On the leak detection, we have both the facility doing leak detection activities where they try to find the leaks within their facilities, and then we also try to find the leaks within the facilities through our inspection process.
But you report it back to the refinery and then they fix it anyway.
They definitely fix it when they find their leaks, yes.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike, I've been following the rule development process on 1151, and I was really gratified to see the approach that you've taken with them, and I know that it sets well with the auto body industry, and I commend your staff for doing that. I've been around long enough to know that that hasn't always been the case with all the rules, but I'm encouraged to see that you plan to do that now and going forward with a number of other rules. So thank you very much on behalf of my members.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate the kind words there. Rita.
Sorry to kind of rain on Bill's parade, but from the
1 minute, please. Okay.
yes. I'm going to focus it on slide 12 and 14, and it's going to be about 1151. Unfortunately, 1151 started out as an exercise to phase out PCBTF and TBAC. Our materials don't include those chemicals, but yet we're subjected to a whole host of record-keeping regulations for materials that do not contain toxic chemicals. And then on slide 14, aerospace coatings, metal coatings, wood coatings, the amount of regulation that the district is bringing down on an industry that does not have VOCs or toxic materials is unnecessary. And I would just comment that I would hope that it doesn't turn into an exercise into adding more red tape for facilities, which is what 1151. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go ahead and move to public comment, and just to say that you can see we have a very ambitious and full slate of items this year. We'll look forward to also having each of you, as appropriate, also consider separate and apart from the advisory group, engaging in the various committees and making comments as you deem appropriate and participating on behalf of your constituencies or organizations.
Mr. Chair, what about other business? Because I
So we're
did have,
moving to,
you said public comment, which is item 8, but there's item 7 is other business, and I have another business.
One person on public comment for this item itself.
Oh, thank you.
I'll get to that, Rita, but thank you for your trying to help me along there.
We're rushing, so.
Okay.
I'm rushing.
Go ahead and go to public comment, please. We have Joe Lizuzo.
Yes, can you hear me?
Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, thank you for your time. And thank you for that last set of slides regarding the rules and regulations. I don't know if you realize, but for all of us here on Zoom, that last slide flew by so fast. If you wouldn't mind putting that up for a few seconds, I'd greatly appreciate the slide that pertained to your contact and phone numbers, please. Can you put that up again for us, please?
Go ahead and continue on your comment, and we'll work to.
No, I'll speed this along. That is my final comment. If you can please put that up, I'd appreciate that for everybody in the Zoom audience.
Okay, yes, we'll go ahead and do that, and also that information will be is available online and in the packet as well if you needed that. But we'll put that on screen for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That'll conclude your public comments, Joe.
Yeah, that ends my public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we'll move to other business. Colleagues, any other business we should be mindful of?
Yes.
Go ahead, Rita.
I would request that we schedule another meeting to agendize an action item for this committee to take a position on rules 1111 and 1121. Thank you.
Second.
Regarding scheduling, we'll take that request under advisement. If you, at this time, as far as setting a specific date, that's not something we're prepared to do at this time. So I'll take that as a direction. If you want to go ahead and just point of order, staff, if they want to make that motion to do that. Are we compelled to come up with a date? I mean, again, I'm not clear. We're set up in a quarterly format, so that I think that is something that will take more under advisement than that's going to happen for certain. That we have some other things we have to take under consideration regarding adding additional meetings. I hear you loud and clear. You'd like to have another meeting. I think I mentioned that already. So if you just would allow me to work on what I already originally said that I was going to work on, absent a motion, I'd appreciate that. So can we just let me follow through with what I originally initiated I was going to do? Can you pull the motion in a second so I can, just respectfully?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. I was only trying to support your intent, so
I
thank you.
appreciate
But
that.
I'll pull my motion in respect for your leadership. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments or other business? Okay, and we'll see if we have any other public comment.
Oh, Harvey raised his hand.
Okay. Go ahead, Harvey. You're being heard.
Hello, okay, thank you. So I got, okay, my name's Harvey Etter. I'm speaking for myself and for the Public Solar Power Coalition, like-minded folks. 45 years ago, there was a solar finance program, $180 million, and they said for everybody for demonstrating solar hot water and heat at the PUC. Okay, it was Commissioner Grimes first black commissioner of the PUC. It was under Brown. We were consultants. They said, well, you're taxing through the rate base, and it's inequitable to charge everybody increase. For poor people who can't buy these systems, said, well, we're going to take 10%, $18 million, and what are we going to do with it? So we were hired to do, we did a consulting, I wanted to do with it a little contract, the Low Income Solar Equity Program. We said, okay, you had tax credits, and they were refundable at that time from the federal government and from the state. And you could get, for a hot water or space heating electric system, 10 grand. We said, well, take that and put it down on a place and start a business, a co-op, installing solar and stuff, making these things, and leverage that and coordinate it. So, and including, this was done through CalSIA, the California Solar Industry Association, etc. And so there's stuff on this going back, and there's a history. Okay, the solar industry developed almost 150 years ago here in Southern California. In 1910, you look at building permits for Pasadena, 30% had solar in it. Okay, the gas companies went and extended their lines and gave away free heaters and basically wiped it out. Okay, it ended up going to Florida with electric after that World War II for the copper. Now in the World War, they really got it. They got 90% in Israel, and they got high percentages in China. I saw it in Israel in '68 when I was there. And my surviving relatives, what's that? Oh, that's our solar hot water. Okay, this stuff can be done. There's a history to it. There's also two books. One called The Golden Thread, made in 1980 by Perlin and Butte. The Golden Thread, a 2,500-year history of solar. And it's been rewritten about 10 years ago. I'm blanking on it's 6,000-year history of solar. I'm blanking on the title anyway, but it goes back to how they started fires in China 6,000 years ago, and then the Greeks and the Romans 2,000-3,000 years ago by using little parabolic dishes made out of copper and stuff. Anyway, this stuff's been around for a long time, and it can be done, and we can do it. So public power, word public power, okay, this can be looked at.
Thank you, Harvey. That'll conclude our public comment. I'll close public comment, and we'll just set our next meeting date at this time is Friday, June 13th at 11:30 a.m. That'll conclude our meeting. I want to thank you all for your input today, and also, again, our hearts and prayers with all those that are suffering through the tragic fires, and wishing Mayor Stewart Godspeed and safety. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.